What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're taking a look at some of the best value players for your Game Week 1 sides. It's worth saying that FPL have got the pricing pretty much spot on for the second season running. So there's no players that are severely underpriced, but there's still value to be had. So let's start off with a couple of midfielders. There's lots of preseason content to come over the next few weeks, by the way. So if you want to stay up to date, make sure you hit that subscribe button. First two players that I want to talk about, Kudus at Spurs and Sarr at Crystal Palace, both 6.5 million midfielders. Kudus in particular has already got a lot of interest from FPL managers. I think people are expecting him to come in at 7 or 7.5, and so at 6.5 he feels underpriced. And I think that's fair, right? Because he's had that move to Spurs, and you expect them to score more goals than like a West Ham team, and Thomas Frank's there as well, maybe he could have been 7 million. So I think 6.5 is a pretty good price. And let's be honest, it's always nice when you buy an attacker that's facing a newly promoted side Game Week 1. And that's what Kudus has against Burnley. So I really like him. I suspect he will be first choice in that Spurs side. I don't really think that's up for debate. I will say, though, just to temper expectations a little bit, I've already seen comparisons to Brian Mbeumo. Like Thomas Frank, Brentford last year, Mbeumo was great. Could Kudus be that player for Spurs under Thomas Frank this year? Potentially, and we know he's a quality player, but from an FPL point of view, in terms of output, goals and assists, Mbeumo was on penalties and he was a 90-minute man week in, week out. I don't see Kudus being either of those things at Spurs, especially with Champions League. And also, at West Ham, his goal threat and creativity wasn't all that high. I've said that over the past couple of seasons. Now, of course, he's still a fairly young player. Those kind of things can improve, and they may well do in that Spurs team. But I wouldn't be picking him thinking he's Mbeumo. But also, Mbeumo this year is 8 million. Kudus is only 6.5. So he does feel like a nice price. And I think out of the 6.5 million midfielders, I would definitely expect him to be starting pretty regularly. So I do like him. I think Ismaila Sarr is quite a good option as well. Like maybe even instead of Kudus. I think it's difficult to buy a player when they've got a fixture like Chelsea away in Game Week 1. But after that, the next three for Palace are Forest at home, Villa away and Sunderland at home, which I really like. So they've still got a newly promoted side in their first four fixtures. It's just not Game Week 1. We saw last year he's absolutely nailed in that Palace side. Palace do also have Europe this year. Not quite sure yet which competition they will be in. So there could be some more rotation than we've become accustomed to. But I still expect Sarr to get pretty decent minutes. And ultimately, as a fan of kind of stats and underlying data, his goal threat is higher and his creativity was a bit higher as well. And you can see that reflected last year. Like Sarr got 9 goals, 8 assists, pretty decent return and more than what Kudus did. And I think there's every chance that he could do similar this year. And again, it's not to say Kudus is a bad player. He absolutely could improve in that Spurs side, but I wouldn't completely write Sarr off. And yes, you don't necessarily want Chelsea away in Game Week 1, but Game Week 2, Kudus has got City away anyway, whereas Sarr walked straight into Forest at home, which again is not as good as Burnley at home, but still pretty decent. So I think there's merit to maybe have both if you want to cheapen out a couple of your midfield positions to have money elsewhere. And I think if you want one, then Kudus is great, but don't completely write off Sarr either. I think he could be good value, especially when he's 1 million less than Eze. So speaking of Spurs, I really like Dominic Solanke as well at 7.5 million. I wouldn't say it's a game-changing price, but when you compare him to Bowen at 8 million, Watkins at 9, Isak at 10.5, I think Solanke's got potential to be value at 7.5, especially under Thomas Frank. Ultimately, if we're comparing what Spurs players will be like versus Brentford last year, I think Solanke is more likely to be like Visser than Kudus is to be Mbeumo. We've seen, although Solanke's first season in a Spurs shirt wasn't spectacular in terms of output, the season before he got 19 goals at Bournemouth. He's capable of pushing 15 to 20 in a season. And also, if we get indications over pre-season that Son's minutes are going to be reduced this year, I would expect Solanke to be next in line for penalties. And in terms of competition for his place, we know Tell can play through the middle, although I don't expect that to happen a huge amount this year. Richarlison can definitely play number 9, but I think Solanke's pretty nailed. And I think his minutes will be decent. His goal threat's always good. Opening fixtures outside of Man City away in Game Week 2 are good as well. He's someone that you can just put in your team and leave for a little while. There's no real question marks over him. You've got Visser at 7.5, Mateta at 7.5. They are definitely comparable in terms of value, especially if Visser stays at Brentford and gets penalties. But right now, without that information, Solanke is probably my pick of the 7.5s, and I think he will be good value. So 4.5 million defenders always seem to offer pretty decent value, and this season is no different. I actually thought that FPL might put the price of some of these players up just to give us a little bit more to think about, but they haven't done that. So it just seems pointless even looking at newly promoted defenders. And if you've got a 4 million defender in your team, if you can spend that extra 0.5, it's probably worth it. I think the value for these players like Konza, Gay, etc. is not necessarily they're going to go and get you a clean sheet or an attack and return every week, but they can be relied on for starts. So you never need to massively worry about transferring them out of your squad, and you can focus transfers elsewhere. So let's talk about some of my favourite picks at this price point. Konza, like I've just mentioned, is one of the strongest 4.5s to start with in game week 1. The opening 6 game weeks just look pretty good all round. It's not ideal Newcastle at home game week 1. And then you are straight into an away game against Brentford in game week 2. But ultimately, I look at those first 6 for Villa: Newcastle at home, Brentford away, Palace at home, Everton away, Sunderland away, and Fulham at home. And think if I had to play Konza in any of those games, that's fine. And it's unlikely that you're going to play your 4.5 every single week anyway. Most people will probably have at least 2 in their squad. So they are definitely benchable. So I like Konza. If you could guarantee me that Luca Dean or Maatsen we're going to start every single game for Villa, I definitely go for them instead for the attacking potential. But I don't think anyone can guarantee me that right now unless one of them gets transferred away, which would be more likely to be Luca Dean. Gay, I think, is a good option wherever he ends up. So if it's at Crystal Palace, great. If it's at Spurs, great. Presumably he would go straight into that team. And maybe Liverpool, there would be slight doubts about whether he takes Konate's place if Konate doesn't get sold. But for 4.5, you'd probably take that risk. So I like him wherever he is. If he's at Palace, game week 1, Chelsea away, and game week 6, Liverpool at home, not great. With the 4 fixtures in between, game weeks 2 to 5, I think most of them look pretty okay if you had to play him there. You've also got Richards at 4.5 in that Palace team as well. Then we've got Spurs players. So Van der Ven and Udogie would be the 2 that I would look at. I think with Spurs, because they've got a new manager, it's going to be worth watching them in pre-season to see how he lines up. Presumably the back 4 will be Porro, Romero, Van der Ven and Udogie, but you never know. Jed Spence can play right back and left back. Udogie is left-footed though. I do think that will give him an advantage. And I think Van der Ven will be ahead of Danzo as well. So I'm expecting Van der Ven and Udogie to be pretty good value. Burnley at home looks like a great chance of a clean sheet in game week 1. City away in game week 2 is really tough. But then you've got Bournemouth at home, West Ham away, Brighton away and Wolves at home. So there are definitely games in there you wouldn't mind playing a Spurs defender. And surely they will be a better defence than they were last year. So both of these are good picks. Udogie's an interesting one because I think most of the time, if you've got 2 players at the same price, you're going to go for the fullback. But Udogie's underlying numbers are not all that special. And I don't know if him and Porro will be bombing forward. I think it's more likely to be Porro getting into those attacking positions. So for that reason, I might actually prefer Van der Ven. I think he'll be better for defensive contributions as well. So it's close between the 2. If you want to go for Udogie, you absolutely can. But Van der Ven's also a pretty good pick at 4.5. De Kuiper at Brighton is going to be a big talking point in pre-season. I don't think it's completely official, although it might be by the time you watch this video. But it looks like Estupiñán is going to AC Milan. And De Kuiper they've signed as a left back. So right now it looks like he is probably going to be first choice. I will caution that last year we all thought Barco was going to be this absolute bargain defender for Brighton, and they ended up loaning him out. I don't think they're going to loan De Kuiper out. Can I guarantee you he's going to play 90 minutes week in, week out from the start? No. But there are some okay fixtures there. Fulham at home, game week 1. Everton away, game week 2. I guess after that, it does get a bit tricky, 3 to 6. You've got City, Bournemouth, Spurs and Chelsea. So it's not great. But De Kuiper's attacking numbers from previous clubs are really good. Now, how well that will translate to the Premier League, we don't know. But if he is given license to get forward, he could be a really exciting pick for 4.5. I'm not saying he's essential. I'm not saying he'll definitely be in my team. I might go for a safer pick. But there is reason to be excited if we see enough in pre-season, and then just hope it's not another Barco situation. And then another player that's really popular is Wan-Bissaka for West Ham. Quite a few assists last year. I don't think he's necessarily as attacking as the assist last year suggested, but he's only 4.5 and he will chip in with the odd return. And he's got Sunderland away game week 1. I will say, I don't think the fixtures afterwards are all that great. Chelsea at home, Forest away, Spurs at home, next 3. But again, if you had to play him against Forest away, you had to play him against Palace at home in 5, Everton away in 6, that would be fine. So I would say right now, in terms of safety of starts at the clubs they're currently in, Konzagay and Wan-Bissaka look really good. But I really like those Spurs options, especially when they got Burnley at home in 1 and Wolves at home in 6. And I think 3 and 4, Bournemouth and West Ham, also look pretty good. And primarily, as we've already talked about a lot in this video, we should see an uptick in Spurs overall, especially if Romero and Van der Ven can stay fit. So I've seen some conversations already that there's not many cheap midfielders under 6.5 million worth considering, but I do think there's some options at 5.5. I've got Anderson at Forest, Caicedo at Chelsea, and then Reinders at Man City. I think with Anderson and Caicedo in particular, you'd be more getting them in for defensive contributions. They might chip in with the odd attack and return. Anderson might take some set pieces, but a big part of their appeal is that they win the ball back, right? They make those tackles, ball recoveries, and stuff like that. And FPL put out a graphic with how many points Anderson and Caicedo would have got from defensive contributions if it was a thing last year. And I added that to their total, and Anderson would have finished on 143 points last season, and Caicedo was 140, and they're both 5.5. Whereas if you look at the total points for players in and around 6.5 to 7 million from last year, bearing in mind these don't include defensive contributions, Matoma was 145, Eze 148, Sarr 149. Anderson and Caicedo would have got close. Some of those players might have got the odd defensive contribution, so their total might have been a bit higher. But just as an example, given the price disparity, Anderson and Caicedo could be good. The only thing I would say, I think the value in these players is over the long term. Like often, you might pick an attacking player for 4 to 6 weeks, hoping they absolutely smash it in easy fixtures, and you get those kind of 10 to 15 point scores. You're not going to get that with like Anderson and Caicedo. Rather than get like 2 or 3 points, they might get 4 or 5 more often, and you need that over the long term. Again, like 4.5 million defenders, some of the value is in just leaving them in your side and concentrating transfers elsewhere. Obviously, you don't want a squad full of players you just get a small amount of points from and never have to worry about. You do want those big scores, but you put someone like Caicedo in, you forget about him, and you just concentrate transfers elsewhere. So I quite like both of those players. But if you're on a strategy where you're going to wildcard definitely in game week 4, you want to attack the first 3 game weeks, you probably don't want a player like that. If you want to play more long term, they do offer value at 5.5. It's just hard to, especially if you're a long-term player of FPL, it's hard to get your head around clearances, blocks, interceptions, tackles, and ball recoveries. You want to go for those goals and assists. That is kind of habit. Maybe that's not the way we play this year. With Reinders, I don't think defensively he would pick up as many points, but he might be a bit more attacking. If you look at his underlying numbers last year, better than both Anderson or Caicedo, albeit in a different league. And I think there's a lot of comparisons to how Gundogan was a few seasons ago, where he did maybe start deeper, but was given license to get forward. And if City can get Rodri back fully fit and start in most games for 90 minutes again, Reinders will have that opportunity to go forward. I will always, give a word of caution for Man City players. I don't know if we can say Reinders is 100% now to start every game, but I think there's a good chance he will start the majority, and he's only 5.5, and City have got some pretty good opening fixtures. So if you were asking me to pick between these 3, I'd probably say Reinders is the upside pick. He might go and get you some goals and assists. But if you want those consistent scores, it's probably from Caicedo or Anderson. And I don't know. I mean, Anderson scored more last year, potentially some set pieces as well. He's probably the way I would go, but I quite like Caicedo too. So this feels like pointing out the obvious, so I'll make it quick. But obviously keep an eye out for injuries over pre-season. There's potential value to be had if first choice players get injured, specifically with goalkeepers. So for some reason, FPL always price the backups really cheap. So Kepa is 4.5 million for Arsenal and Mamardashvili is 4.5 for Liverpool. So if Raya or Alisson were to get injured, and Alisson has picked up a few injuries over the last few years, all of a sudden they are fantastic value. So keep an eye on that. Also Kinski for Spurs. I don't know right now whether there's a genuine chance that he could become number 1. But when you search on Twitter for Kinski and Vicario, there's lots of conversation that it's not a certainty over who will start. The majority of Spurs fans that I've seen talking about it seem to say roughly Vicario a better shot stopper, but Kinski much better distribution. and Thomas Frank might value that slightly more depending on how he wants to set up. So obviously we can see over pre-season, I'm sure Thomas Frank will get asked for it. If it turns out that Kinski is first choice, which I will reiterate again is in no way a guarantee, but if he is, he's only 4 million. And it's always nice to have a playing 4 million goalkeeper on your bench that you can rely upon if your first choice goalkeeper gets injured or has a terrible fixture or something like that. So maybe it's just initial reactions and people's opinions will change as they tinker around with their squad a little bit more. But I have seen some negativity towards the forward options that we have to pick from this year. Even so far that people have been making 4-5-1 and 5-4-1 drafts, I do think there could be some value at 6.5. Specifically Danny Welbeck at Brighton and Strand Larsen at Wolves. And don't get me wrong, these are not exciting picks, but they do offer kind of what you want from an FPL pick if you can get it. And that is guaranteed starts. I'm pretty confident they'll both be the main starting number 9s as it stands. You know, both clubs might make moves in the transfer market, but right now, Danny Welbeck should start game week 1, same for Strand Larsen. The minutes should be good for that reason. And they're probably both on penalties. Now, penalties are not the be-all and end-all. I don't think Wolves got any last year, or very few. Doesn't mean they won't get any this year, but it's not the be-all and end-all. They have been nerfed slightly as well in the bonus system, but they're still valuable. You can play badly, someone else can win you a penalty, you convert it, happy days, 3 points. So, and by the way, 3 with an F, not 3 points. It's obviously worth 4 if you score a goal as a forward. So for that reason, I like Welbeck and Strand Larsen. Goal threat is quite similar. Both scored over 4 points per match last year. Fixture-wise, I think for both Brighton and Wolves, I would say it's not an amazing fixture run to start the season, but I feel like I could say that for pretty much every club. There's very few that have got perfect set of opening 5 to 6 fixtures. For Brighton, Fulham at home, Everton away first 2, then City at home, Bournemouth away, Spurs at home. I just think with Brighton, they've got the capability to be a pretty strong attack. They've got lots of options, and they're probably, you know, you look at like the top 6, 7 teams, Brighton are probably next in line to kind of try and push. I don't think they will for what it's worth finish in the top 6, but they're one of the next best teams. So I quite like Welbeck for that reason. Fulham at home is not a bad start. For Strand Larsen, a bit tougher, City at home, and then it's Bournemouth away. Then you've got Everton at home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home. So I'm not sitting here telling you that these are amazing fixtures, but for 6.5, you've got pretty much nailed on penalty takers. At 7.5, Solanke could be on penalties, probably in a better team for Spurs. Decent option, but he's $1 million more. Visser, if he stays at Brentford, probably will have penalties. Mateta, for example, at Palace, Eze will probably take them. For $1 million less, I think there's value there. I'm not saying they're going to score more points than those 7.5s, but it might be, depending on the combination you're looking at, it might be worth saving $1 million up front and spending that in midfield, or converting your 5 million defender to a 6 million premium. That's where the value lies. If I had to pick one of these two right now, I think just because they're not playing City in game week 1, although they play them in game week 3, I'd probably go for Brighton. I think their opening 4 are slightly better. When you push it to opening 5, 6, it probably swings more towards Strand Larsen. You could maybe even set up a team to have both at 6.5. I don't mind that at all. But obviously keep an eye on the transfer market. Either of these teams could buy a new number 9. You never know. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button as well. Trying to hit 500k before the end of the season. Let me know down in the comments below if there's any of these players you disagree with, or whether they're absolutely locked in your team. And is there any players I've missed? There probably is, especially 4.5 million defenders. So leave a comment below, and I'll catch you again soon.